The topic today is environment, and the situation is what you grew up seeing. I didn't know exactly how much effect your environment really has on the way people think until I became exposed to some people out in the community. And the way certain people thought, it shocked me because let me see if I can just get a clear download from the Most High. Because most of the time, well, I don't rehearse or pre whatever, I just let the download come. But this popped into my mind this morning about a certain person said something to me, and it made me think that maybe that was the environment that this person grew up in. And I have to realize not everyone was exposed to the same environments or had the same exposures. And it also triggered me to think that maybe this person had been exposed to a lot of sexual type things as they grew up. Because the statement, if I can remember correctly, and sometimes I don't directly see these, and like I said, my third eye will alert me to things. But there is a person that thinks that if a female is alone and she's attractive, that she must have somebody somewhere she's sexually involved with. And that is not true for a lot of women. A lot of attractive women, especially the ones who are extremely spiritual, are women that don't get the dates, or the women that are at home alone. And if they are about their business, they really don't have time. I mean, their first thought is not of who I'm gonna fuck this weekend or who I'm gonna fuck tomorrow. They don't wake up thinking like that. It's who am I gonna have sex with today? Normal people don't wake up like that. At least I'm hoping they don't. The majority of them don't wake up like that. And I started thinking how maybe that's how the person grew up. Maybe that's what they saw. Maybe that's what they experienced the adults around them doing. But I know I grew up way out on a ranch. You just don't, you wake up with thoughts of, you go to work, you see your parents, go to work and back. You wake up, the first thing you do before you even, I mean, when your feet hit the ground, you make your bed, you go brush your teeth. You don't get up thinking things like that. And then the next thing, your parents go to work. You go to school. That's what some people's environments are like. On Saturdays, you're at home, you either play outside with your friends, and it wasn't any exposure to any drugs or anything where I stayed. It's not to say I was blessed. I was blessed that way, but I was in nature most of the time. And the few kids that lived near me, we grew up in nature. We weren't, I guess, hip to drugs because in our spare time, we had chores to do. Our parents were extremely strict. They watched us. They exposed us to things. They took us on vacations. We didn't know or even think. In I wasn't allowed to watch much TV. I did watch TV because we were busy playing. So if there was anything sexual, it would have had to have come through the TV because my parents were very particular about those who came around us. Now, if anything was to happen to us, it would have been at a sitter's house, or somewhere else. But as far as in our home and our environment, we weren't preconditioned to think in a sexual way. We were very naive about stuff like that. And I'm trying to think, even the first time we discussed something was probably maybe in the 5th grade. We were talking about menstrual cycles, things like that. And we had a close-knit community. Well, the lady up the street was a teacher. My dad was a teacher and a principal. He eventually became a principal and he was very active in the government. My mom, she worked with EOC. She was director of EOC. So she helped a lot of people. And I'm thinking, my dad, he shielded me from a lot of things. I'm thinking the most exciting thing that happened in our neighborhood is when I got on a bus one time and this guy knew the color of my underwear and I couldn't figure out how he knew the color of my underwear. And we found out, my dad and I actually, because one morning I was up and there was a glitch or something whereas like right here, something, my blind was kind of like bent or something. The guy had been peeping through my window. And one morning I got up and I was getting dressed for school. And that day on the bus, I can guess what color underwear you got. I was so embarrassed. And so the next morning, I attempted to get dressed again, but I looked up in my mirror and I could see behind me that there was movement. And I turned around and I saw someone peeping in my window and I screamed. I said, Daddy. Daddy busted in my room. I'm like this. I'm like, oh my God. I said, somebody was peeping in my window. So my dad grabbed the shotgun, went round to where my window. Sure enough, he saw footprints, old footprints, new footprints. And before they paved over the road, because we lived like way out on this place called Ranch Estate, he followed the footprints to a house up the street. And that same boy lived there, and my dad had his shotgun. He said, if you ever attempt to peep in my daughter's window again, I will blow your head off. That was like the most exciting thing that could have happened even relating to like sexual stuff. But I remember one time, it don't mean that kids weren't curious or things like that, but that wasn't like the first thoughts in our mind, to do things like that. And I remember one night, one of the neighbors had asked, he said, well, sneak out the house and come over to my house. And my mama sometimes would sleep in the room with me in my twin bed. I had twin beds, and she would sleep in the other bed. And because my dad, he would snore a lot. I mean, snore to the point he would shake the ceiling. And my mom had thoughts like, if I don't leave that room, I'm going to stab him in his sleep. It was that bad. So she would sleep in my room. And I said, well, it's so boring around here. Let's do something. So I actually crept out of the room. And when I crept out of the room, I remember I didn't have my jacket. So I went in the front closet and I grabbed what I saw was a fur coat. I just grabbed it. And I walked around the block. So I knocked on the window of this guy's window. And he was like one of my best friends because it was like my brother, everywhere I had to go, my brother went. And there were only maybe like 2 or 3 girls. But we used to build clubhouses and climb trees and stuff like that. But this particular night, I knocked on the guy's window. And he had the kind of windows that you let up like this. And he pulled me through the window. Now, his gap was extremely straight. I think I was maybe about 16 or 17 when that happened. But anyway, he pulled me through the window. So I got in his room. We were watching like TV. And we heard his dad get up in the hallway. He said, you all right in there? And he was like, oh my God. He was like, get up under the cover. And he was like trying to lay me flat. And then he like pulled the cover like it would look like plain, just plain like part of his bed. He said, I'm all right, Dad. I'm all right. Like things like that happened, but shortly, it was all innocent though. It was the fact of us being able to climb through the window in the middle of the night, sneak out and sneak back home. Because all of our parents were extremely strict. They were all educators. But things like that happened. And it was like, we thought it was exciting to be able to climb through the window and then sneak back out the window and get back in the house before Mom woke up. And it didn't have to be anything sexual. It was just, I guess we called it nice, clean fun. But stuff like that happened. But then as I think my dad, he told me himself, he said, maybe I should have let you date more. Maybe I should have allowed you to be exposed to more things. And he said, I can count on one hand who you have been with sexually. And now it's to like 6 people. I've been alive a while. And I said, Daddy, how you know? This was in like my late 20s, early 30s. Up until I married my dad, he knew the people I'd been to. He's okay, you've been married, don't. And I just know. I said, but Daddy, how you know? He said, I know you. He said, I know you better than you think I know you. He said, I don't allow you to watch TV because things like that will influence your mind and you're very sensitive. He said, that's the reason that I don't allow you to watch the news or certain things on TV. And he said, like I said, he said, maybe I should have let you date more and you would have been more prepared for some of the men that are out there that aren't good people. He said, I didn't have that talk with you. He said, if I could have stopped you from some of the hurt that you've gone through, I did. If I'd known, I would have prepared you much better. Because a father who loves his children, he doesn't like to see them hurt. He doesn't like to see them being taken advantage of. And he said, maybe I should have prepared you. But he did tell me, because he taught me how to change the tires on my car. He taught me how to change my own oil. He said, it's some guys out there that are extremely lazy. He said, they are not going to be like the men you know around here. They will not treat women like some of the men treat women respectable around here. He said, I'm going to teach you how to change your own tire. I'm going to teach you how to change the oil on your car, because some men will walk right by it and won't even help you. And that came to fruition. One day after I moved to this town, I was actually at one of the Walmarts, and my car, I had just gotten, and for some reason it wouldn't start. So I went up under the hood trying to do some of the things and check some of the things my dad had taught me to check, and it still wouldn't start. I saw 3 men, and sadly to say they were African American men, walked by me, then asked me if I needed help, then attempt to help me. So I stayed out there about another 20 minutes, and then there was a guy all the way across the parking lot. He said, ma'am, do you need help? And he happened to have been a white guy. He said, well, I tell you what, let me take a look at it. He looked at it. He said, oh, because I had the scribbler cap, and he did something, he twisted it. He said, yo, spark plug, it wouldn't get enough spark or something, and he tightened it. He said, try that now. And the car started right up. If they had just only stopped for a second. I mean, they didn't even think to help a female in distress who needed help with her car. And I say, my daddy told me about people like that. He told me about men like that. And I had been through a situation with another person, and that's when my dad he said I should have prepared you better in an emotional state to deal with some of those males, because all of them aren't men. And I understood what he was saying. But your environment dictates sometimes a lot as to your way of thinking. And I started meeting people who didn't think, and I was like shocked. And I'm like, you actually think that females are supposed to have sex with multiple people? That was not it. I was taught you're supposed to get married first and have sexual partners, or if you did have a sexual partner, you have that one sexual partner for long term. You don't bounce from person to person to person, because I didn't see that in my environment. My mom was always with my dad, and they had a rule in our house that no man was allowed to come in that house if my daddy wasn't home. No woman was allowed to come and sit up with my dad if my mom was not home. When they hung with people, these were people that they were mutually friends with, or other married couples. I don't remember them having but maybe a couple of single friends, because we used to go over to my mom's friend, Mr. and Mrs. Myers, Mr. and Mrs. Taylor. These people were all married. So all the married people hung together. It wasn't no married people and some single people. It cut down on the BS. I look back now, it cut down on the BS of a single trying to get with a married person, or it just cut down on a lot of confusion. And that's the way they moved. And my dad, he was like, since he was in the public eye, a lot of women used to approach him. And I can remember, you know how little kids listen and teenagers listen, and I respected my dad so much for this. There was this woman colleague of his, a Caucasian woman, walked up to my dad. My mother was standing there with him. And the woman totally ignored my mom. Hi, God. I am not going to use my dad's name. Hi, his name. How you doing? And touching and trying to hug on my dad. And my dad stepped back. He said, excuse me. He said, if you are to approach me and you see my wife is standing here, you acknowledge her. This is my wife. You do not step to me. You do not put your hands on me. You do not touch me. And you are to walk to me and to acknowledge my wife. Now that is a real man. And I don't care what other things my dad may have done, may have had a mean streak or whatever, but I tell you what, he showed respect to his queen at all times. I don't care what went on out there in the street. I didn't know about it. He didn't expose his children. He didn't allow his children to be exposed to that. And earlier in his day, when we were little, before he got on the right track, he would drink a little bit. But when my mama said she was headed out that door, my dad straightened up real quick, because he knew what he had. He knew what he had, and he didn't want to lose it. But not everybody grew up seeing women being respected. Not everybody grew up seeing that there was God, the man, God, and family. Some people grew up seeing their mothers sleep with multiple people, or their dad being a hoe if the dad was in the house. And I didn't start to realize that until I moved away from home, that not everybody had a two-parent home. And like I said, maybe I was blessed, but there are some good single mothers out there too that don't allow different men to come in and out of their household with their children. But then I also saw those who had multiple people hanging up around their children, and they're thinking, I'm getting up today as soon as the kids get off school. I'm finna get my D. Instead of getting up, having goals, going to work, or finding some activity to do to expand their minds, their main thought is who they go have sex with that day. I had never been exposed to anything, and I couldn't confuse, and you can't change their way of thinking because they think that way, that I must have been that way too, and I must be that way. That's not the way I was brought up. That's not the way I am. That's not the way I will ever be. And I try to instill, because even when I brought my children into the environment here, they picked up on things from some of the people that had not been exposed to the lifestyle. They've been exposed to my mother and father. They've been around their grandparents and seeing their marriages and things, but then their environment changed and they started picking up. But you always keep those moral foundations if you first saw certain things. But yes, your environment will influence the way you think and the way you see things. Now, my older son, before he had kids or anything, he went to school, got married, then had his kids. My younger son has no kids, because they themselves out of their mouths say, we want to be stable before getting into a marriage and having kids, because with children comes responsibilities. My older daughter had one son, and thank goodness she has a good father who really helps her with her son. Yes, but she immediately went to work. Immediately. So, okay, I brought this child into this world. It is my responsibility to take care of it and make sure that I don't have any more afterwards. And my older daughter, some things are brought onto people that you don't plan. Like when a person is sexually assaulted, that is not something that is in your control, because sometimes you don't know when it's going to happen. Some people don't take no for an answer, and I've had a relative go through that. I've been through it myself. And sometimes you have unwanted pregnancies, but it's not because you out there being promiscuous or being whorish or something that you've learned. That was something that was thrust upon you. But like I said, people come from different environments. They're affected in different ways in those environments. Therefore, they're going to think differently. Some people go think that, hey, I'm getting up today, and my first thought is who I'm going to fuck today. Excuse my language, but I've heard that more than once around here. Instead of, this morning, I'm going to get up and do the best I can do for my life. I'm going to tend to my health. I'm going to go out and change the world. I'm going to do something good for somebody. There are people that wake up with positive things on their mind outside of who's going to enter my body. There are some extremely beautiful women, as classified by society, that do not open up their legs to every man. There are people, period, I don't care how you look, that wake up with a mindset of how am I going to improve myself, better myself, and change my environment for the better. Not everybody wakes up with sex on their mind. Not everybody wakes up thinking who I'm gonna fuck today. That's not reality for everybody. So before you put an ignorant statement out there about who stays alone without having somebody fucking them, maybe that was your environment, but it's not everybody's environment, and that's not what everybody was raised experiencing and seeing. So I pray for those who were not brought up saying that you're supposed to have respect for yourself and for others. Because when you can't respect yourself, you can't respect nobody else. You gonna have thoughts like that. So you have to start working from the inside out. Saying, okay, what positive things can I do today? What positive things can I do to better myself or to help teach somebody else? Because you can't teach nobody anything good unless you first start with yourself or with the environment. You have to take a look at the environment that you were brought up in and say, okay, what can I change about it? If you weren't brought up in a good environment, seek out counseling for yourself. Seek out people who are doing positive things around you. So your thoughts aren't always on a low vibration. Get it up, get your vibration up, and then your thoughts will change. I say. And they should be teaching more of this. But even in a Christian church, because it's sad, because I call it a hospital for sinners. And the preachers going with little girls in the church and father abuse. But yet you look at people who want to praise the Most High out in nature, or pray a little different, or connect with the source in a different way. You cannot judge or disrespect how people choose to worship if they're choosing to worship in the truth. Because a lie can be taught and preached anywhere. And you can teach, but it's not about what you teach, it's about what you do and how you live your life. What you do and how you live your life speaks louder than any words that can come out your mouth. And those that do not know you can fix their mouth to tell a lie about those things that they have never known or been exposed to. But I can speak with authority because I have been brought up with respect. And if anyone ever says that I show disrespect to myself or to anyone else, that means you talk about my parents. And my parents, they raised me to have great moral standards. And I will not sit down and I will not sit back and allow anybody to misjudge me in a wrong way, or it will speak on my parents' raising of me. And they did everything that good parents do to raise me to. They raised me together and tried to shield me from the immoral acts that go on today. So before you speak, you better know what you're talking about. Colored Roses and Thorns, be blessed. Much love. And love yourself. enough to do what's best for you and to raise your vibration and connect with a higher source. And once you connect with that higher source, if you weren't brought up in a good environment, there's no one saying that you cannot change your thought patterns or the things that you do or the things that you say or the disrespect that you show to yourself. That can be changed. All things must change. And all things at one time or another must change for the better. But do not push the lies or your vision over on me to try to bring my vibration down because you haven't found yourself, because you have not bowed to the Most High and realized that God don't make trash. Everything that was fed to you, if you wake up thinking about what my next hole I'ma stick in, or what am I gonna get some deep today, or drink or some drugs, if that's what you think about when you wake up in the morning, check yourself. Because God does not make trash. And dig in yourself and get the help that you need to change your thinking. Because your thinking creates your reality. Blessings from Colored Roses and Thorns.